meaning that employees are either excited by the idea of AI coming in, helping organize their lives or making process better, but they're also worried that it might take their job someday, of course. But we're also seeing that AI skills now are must-have for employees, or must-haves for employees. So that, again, according to Microsoft research, 66% of leaders will not hire someone without IT skills or AI skills. So it's becoming increasingly more necessary. Then we get into the third macro shift we're seeing, which is this idea of the sustainability mindset, where I mentioned that, in the last year, especially, we've seen a huge trend of this, but the number of companies setting science-based carbon reduction targets doubled. So as we're seeing more companies putting sustainability at the forefront of their targets, and they're needing other companies to help them meet their targets, for example. And to give you some, we also can share this afterwards with you, so you can go into more detail. I don't want to bore you too much with stats and statistics, but the fourth shift that we're seeing is the idea of this well-being urgency. And when we talk about that, we're talking about how fast that the change of work, or this rate of change of work, is accelerating faster than people's ability to keep up. So 66% of employees are not thriving, and it's especially worse for those under 35 years old. We're seeing a lot of rise in anxiety. We're seeing a lot of rise in depression, burnout. Anxiety, for example, is much higher in Gen Z workers, and they'll represent a total of a third of the total workforce by 2030. So this is becoming a serious, or even more of a serious issue, right? And we need to work out, and employees and leaders and companies have to work out how to mentor and develop this set of employees, right? And people are seeing now, especially after the last few years of COVID, they need to focus more on their well-being. And for example, that ranks for a lot of employees second in their lives, right behind their families, according to a Steelgaze global study that we did. And again, when we hear about what employees want most, and this does differ a little bit when we go to different spaces, but we're seeing the need for privacy, we're seeing the need for spaces that support well-being, we're seeing the need for hybrid collaboration spaces, easy access to power, and individual enclaves with technology. Now, this clearly reflects the way work's changed. There's more remote meetings, there's not enough spaces that support the privacy, well-being, and hybrid collaboration, right? So we get into a little bit about what well-being is for us, right? There's 6 dimensions of well-being, but for us and a lot of people, well-being is the foundation of joy, right? So we try to understand how space can help change behaviors, and that's kind of what we're setting out trying to do. So 6 dimensions for us, as I mentioned, make up the physical, cognitive, and emotional well-being for us. So meaning, authenticity, belonging, optimism, mindfulness, and vitality. So while a lot of companies might focus on the physical side of things, for example, having access to gym or healthcare benefits, we're really seeing that paying attention to the emotional and cognitive well-being side of things as well makes a tremendous and huge difference. Workers expect their employees or employers to help them. Companies that support their employees' efforts to take care of their own well-being, their emotional, cognitive well-being, we're seeing a huge return on investment. Healthier people or healthier workers, of course, they're able to engage more fully and more willingly and be more productive. So, of course, I'll go into these in a little bit more detail, but just to give you a breakdown of each one. When we talk about finding meaning, we're talking about making people feel satisfied at work, to know that their efforts are making a difference, to be part of this bigger purpose, to help them find themselves in that. When we talk about authenticity, we're talking about creating these spaces that allow people to be truly them, to be safe in what they want to discover, and to be safe in what they want to talk about. Belonging, a sense of belonging, as we wrote here, leads to a sense of trust, empathy, generosity, engagement. So feeling like you belong to the space, feeling like you're a part of it, goes hand in hand with finding meaning. Optimism, when we talk about this, we've seen in the last years, as I mentioned, so many different challenges, and people have to be even more resilient, and companies have to be even more resilient and be able to challenge these norms or challenge these issues in a more positive and constructive way. and helping to manage stress is such a key factor. Mindfulness, when we talk about that, strengthening our ability to concentrate and learn, because if we're not concentrated, if we're not focused, we're not present in the moment, right? We're not able to engage. Vitality, as I talk about, it's about the overall look and feeling rather than just the physical part, trying to bring out the best in people. So when we think about the kind of spaces that happen in each one of these points, for finding meaning, for example, it's about helping people discover their purpose in life, and through space, that could be spaces that allow them to customize their own place, allow them to be part of something. So that could be through, for example, modular pieces to enable an easy changing of their environments, ways to display work and personal interests, ways of personalizing their spaces, whether it's unassigned workstations or assigned workstations, allowing them these kind of spaces that encourage the learning of other cultures and encouraging personal reflection, right? When we talk about authenticity, we talk about shared kind of sandbox areas, places that people feel safe to engage in ideas, to challenge each other, to have the space to encourage discovery and expression, right? And we see employees need to express themselves and their passion, because when we get people talking and about what they like to do, that sometimes they never stop, right? But it brings out that encouragement and excitedness in people, right? So finding your true nature, finding yourself, and having spaces that allow you to collaborate with others in a safe way is super important. When we talk about cultivate belonging, we're talking about creating, a feeling of community, right? That we've heard before, that word, but being accepted and valued for who you are. So that could be through equitable expression. So that could be breaking down those barriers of, a boss and employee, perhaps, and creating these spaces that they can express themselves in an equitable environment, from leader to employee or from employee to other employee. That could be through shared common areas, so social spaces that they can reflect and they can talk with other colleagues in an impromptu way, so not so formal perhaps. So as I mentioned, this could be social spaces, dining areas, this could be those impromptu collaboration zones or social zones. So just trying to encourage and empower employees that they can connect with others in a safe way and a natural way. Then we get into the optimism. So that idea of cultivating this positive mindset. So one that's over the last years, where we've seen a really big issue with mental well-being, trying to bring that positive nature back. So recognizing that the importance of optimism and how that can affect, let's say, the bottom line, how that can affect employees to work in a better way. So that would be through protected spaces that they can reflect. That could be rejuvenation spaces, places they can retreat to, because we are seeing sometimes in a lot of spaces now that they go sometimes too far the other way. So everything's collaborative, everything's social, and there's no place to reflect and rejuvenate and reflect on what you just did and what you talked about. So super important. Then the mindfulness idea, again, goes hand in hand with the previous one. It's that idea for making you aware of where you are, to keep you grounded in your space, to give you a place that you can reflect on. So that could be through wellness rooms, for example. That could be through lounge posture for going really into products. It could be those safe, comfortable spaces, and i.e. like a reflection of your home environment, which we'll get into a little bit later, that people are missing from the office. Then the last one, which is vitality. So being healthy in body and mind and spirit, right? The idea of those three circles of cognitive, physical, and emotional well-being together, having all those together and working on each of them is so important for so many people. So spaces that incentivize healthy choices. It could be, healthy eating at the workplace. It could be allowing leaders and employees to engage in more self-care practice in the workplace, including acknowledging, for example, if things are not okay. So having that space to encourage that messages is super key. So the last thing I want to talk about before I hand it over to Ralu is that when we talk about these shifts and how we've seen these happening either gradually or instant, it's changing how we collaborate and use our offices. It's changing our patterns of play. It's changing our emotions and how we interact with the environment. So when we respond to that change, we see those macro shifts, that creates these new patterns of work. And that means that we're changing the way we design our spaces and look at our spaces. So designing workplaces like great communities that help people and helping organizations to be more resilient and adaptable to change. So that's it from my side. So I'll stop sharing my screen and Riley, you can take over.
Thank you, Declan. I will take over from where you left. All right, so Declan was talking about the four macro shifts, like living on the screen, the AI super cycle, the sustainability mindset, and of course, the well-being urgency. And these four macro shifts, they change how we collaborate and use the office, and that led to creating new patterns of work. The Steelcase response to this and our research led to a community-based design. What is that? Basically, it's a way of thinking about workplace from an urban planning perspective. And when we think about communities, there are two things in mind. A community can be a place where we live, but it can also be the relationships that we build. So a community-based design would incorporate both of them, places and relationships. Now, our inspiration was Jane Jacobs, who was a visionary urbanist from the 20th century. She had an idea and the plan of how to create vibrant cities, vibrant neighborhoods. And her ideas, her insights can also be applied to the workplace. And here you can see a few of them. So the first one is referring to the density. Basically, the further apart we're physically, the further apart we are socially. So density in the office means trying to find a balance between bringing people close enough, but for them to connect, but not to feel overcrowded. Then another idea from Jane that we are also considering is the diversity. That means blending different types of spaces and office layout patterns to avoid monotony. Short blocks. This refers to how much distance we have between different typologies, because shorter stretches are visually more appealing. So if we have longer distances between spaces, we should try to break them up and make them more appealing. Visually, sidewalks. This refers to creating more places for gatherings in the office where people can connect, like cafes or small gardens. Another idea from urban planning is mixed use. That means that combining different functions in the same area can help collaboration. And the last idea would be community involvement. That refers to trying to get the expertise of the people who live in that community and not the outsiders, because the people that are in the community, they know what the real struggles and needs are. Okay, so here you can see how the same principles can be applied to an office and workplace, and how we identify 5 districts. The 5 districts are city center, neighborhoods, business district, urban parks, and university districts. And now we will quickly deep dive in each one of them and see what are their characteristics. So the city center, of course, is the heart of the community, is the place that draws people in. If we look here at the top of the slide, we can see what type of work is happening. So the main activity is a social one, but also we have areas for collaboration, focus, and rejuvenation. The city center it is usually found at natural crossroads, and it can support individual work, like you can see here in the pod, or maybe small groups for collaboration or larger gatherings. The next district is neighborhoods. This is a home base for individuals and teams where work is done. So basically, the main activity is the focus one. So we would have focus spaces together with collaboration, social, and rejuvenation. It can support personal spaces and team spaces. So we can, depending on what the team is doing or the team profile, we can have assigned workstations or unassigned workstations. We can have a mix of meeting rooms, projects rooms, and of course, focus enclaves like here in the back. The business district, you could see this as an area more focused on collaboration, but it can also include other areas like social spaces, rejuvenation, learning, and focus. It's a mix basically of meeting rooms, and the whole purpose for this district would be to spark creativity and innovation. My favorite one to mention is the urban parks district. This also ties together what Declan was saying about well-being. So urban parks are a place in the office where people go to rejuvenate, to find themselves, to maybe take a break from meetings and to focus on themselves. It usually consists of visual and territorial boundary. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but can you see my mouse?
Yes, we
Yeah, I
can.
can see you.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay. So we have visual and territorial boundary, a lot of greenery and individual spaces together with really nice materials that can increase well-being. And the last district is the university one, which is focusing more or is dedicated more to learning for individuals and groups. And at the top, you can see what I was referring. The district emphasizes on learning, but also has other areas like social and collaboration. And the purpose for this space would be to enable both in-person and remote participation to learning, sharing, and teaching. And here is a practical example, let's say, of how a floor plan looked in the past. It was one size fit all, so just rows of workstations and a little in between area. And now if we look at the same footprint and how it looks if we arrange it through this community-based design that offers a diversity of spaces and offers a lot of choice and control. And of course, keeping in mind this approach, it is a flexible approach that can work for small to medium offices, but also for large ones. The only difference would be that if the layout of the space is smaller, then you might have just one district type per floor plan. If we have larger offices, then you can distribute the districts throughout the building. And of course, all this research can be found online. On our website, we have a magazine called Work Better, and in the last number, we covered this subject. So, yeah, that was all from my side.
Apologies about that. Thank you so much, Valu. I feel like we've just gone straight to school. We should start an academy. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, Declan. Thank you, Valu. So I think we can just quickly go straight into the questions. But before we do that, I wanted, my colleague to kind of speak to some of our local challenges, and then maybe ask you some questions around that. After which we will start to take questions. So if anybody has got any questions, please, there is a QA, I think, button where you can just drop your questions, and Victoria will do well to share that with us. So, Amaka, over to you. Do you want to speak to our local challenges? And let's get some insights from Ralu and the team. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Can't hear you. I think you switched mics or something.
Okay, maybe she did. I think I have some of the, yeah? Amaka, are you ready? Okay, I have one question actually. Let me ask that question. I mean, post-COVID, it was very interesting in your presentation. You talked about the Gen Zs, and you talked about the mental health and how, work is affecting them, and your research and the insight that you have garnered over the years concerning that particular generation. I must say that I think, I might be wrong, Declan. I think that this is a global problem. I think it's on every continent. So we're actually having that same challenge. So my question to you is, you finding, I mean, most of your work will of course be in Europe, but are you finding that people are having a hard time going back to the office? And if that has happened in the past, how have employers worked around that, working with your products and working with you? You want to just maybe throw some light on that, please?
Sure. So, I mean, yeah, we talk about, it is a global challenge that we're facing, right? How do make people feel comfortable coming back to the office, things like that. And one of the things that we find, or the way we believe how it could help, is that if you think about how the office looked before, or how even the office looks now, versus how their home office looks. One is super kind of official, office vibe, if you like, and one's very cozy, that is reflecting the person's personality a bit more. So like more organic shapes, more cozy nature, more feel good for their mental and emotional well-being, right? So when we think about how do we merge those two and bring people back to the office, the way we think about it is that we're giving them choice and control. Now, what does that mean exactly for us? That means if you think about what it was before, how offices gave people a choice, it was everyone gets the same thing. Everyone's equal, right? You get the same desk, you get the same thing, same storage cabinet. Now, in order to bring people back, we're thinking about it differently. So that we're giving them what we call an intentional set menu of spaces, meaning that we're giving them more choices in how they want to access the space. So if you think about like a set menu of spaces that are different throughout, and they have more ways to engage in how they want to work, rather than just one application or setting that just does one thing. So a lot more diversity, a lot more multifunctional spaces, going from that one size fits all approach to kind of what we say a one size fits one. So giving them more choices to impact the way they want to work throughout the day. And that kind of, I mean, there's other aspects we can talk about how to merge the organic nature with the more formal office environment, but that's the main thing, giving them choices and control to engage. Does that answer your
So
question?
if I got you, it does. But so I want to just kind of summarize that. If I got
Yep.
you right, what you've done, what you've managed to do to address this challenge is to give them more choices,
Yep.
giving them the autonomy of space, so to speak, so they can choose where they want to work. And then also not make the office look too formal, shifting away from that. Okay, all right, fantastic. I think
I
we're,
could build on
yeah,
that. I
yes,
would
please.
build on this. So yeah, the first thing that comes in mind is this choice and control. Also,
Yeah,
we did research and we asked a lot of people, what do you need to come back to the office? And the number one response was we need privacy because realistically the work changed to a lot of hybrid meetings. So we have a lot more meetings right now. So if you're in the office, you might think, okay, I have another meeting in 15 minutes. Can I have it from my desk? Or do I need to go and find a meeting room? And then this whole thought about privacy comes. And next to that, people said that they need access to power. Again, it's regarding the hybrid work. So to come to the office, besides the the choices that we have, the diversity of the spaces, we also need to increase privacy that can be visual, acoustic, territorial, to have power and to have flexibility.
all right. Thank
Yeah,
you so much for that, Tyler.
thanks,
Augustine?
Raluca. I mean, the last one is also key, which is called flexibility. Flexibility means that we're using the same space, but we can move the furniture, we can rearrange the space as the employee want to feel. We're talking about privacy. Is that does not mean that we're coming back to the traditional way where people were in the closed office. No, we're not going back to that. We're gonna give them spaces where they feel like, let's say, 70% in privacy, in kind of enclosed, but we still have 30% open, where they can also interact. They can feel that they are part of a community, which is the company, because it's a big family, so they have to be part of it. They want to be part of it, but they don't want to be for the moment in the same situation we were before, where people get contaminated very quickly. So we took that into consideration and then set up new arrangements in the same office where people can go around. Maybe next week when we come, people have shifted the thing, they can move it as they want. Jackie, you're on mute. You're on mute, Jackie.
Thank you for that, Austin. I was speaking away. I said I was quite surprised when Ralu spoke to the need for power to work. I thought it was only synonymous to Africa, so it looks like it's in other places. That's pleasant news. But so let's just move to the next questions, because I think we now have a bit more coming in. I have one here, and I'm going to get Tamaka to then take the others. It's on well-being in the workplace. It says, what role does biophilic design play in fostering well-being in office environments? I know you spoke to that, Ralu, when you were talking about the different environments. I think that was for was that the urban one? Urban environment. Do you want to please just speak to that?
Hey, you're on mute, rather.
Sorry. Yes. Yes, we mentioned the biophilia in the urban parks, but also we can see it throughout the office. And this is, of course, a really important subject of how biophilia is fostering well-being in the office. And first of all, I would maybe mention what biophilia means, because a lot of people believe that biophilia refers to greenery, plants. It's more than that. It's about nature. So it's about natural light. It's about the temperature. It's about the organic shapes that we see in the office, and of course about greenery as well. Now, our brain is wired to work better in an environment that is natural compared to an environment that is artificial, like neon lights and rough textures, rooms without maybe natural light. So I would say biophilia plays a really, really important role in our lives, the way we work, the way we think, and the way we live.
I'd love to just follow up on
Alright.
that because I think she explained it terrifically well. The idea that a lot of people just think it's plants, and that we see a lot over the last few years. It seems to be like a thing that's nice to have, right? It'd be nice to have plants or biophilia in the office, but we're seeing now, especially when well-being and the mental and emotional well-being is more important and at the top of the list, that is almost a necessary thing to have that feeling of natural stuff in your life, to connect to nature, to connect to the outside. And that is, again, when we look at people's homes and we see the colors and finishes they're using, the natural organic shapes, the biophilia in terms of plants, but we have to bring that more into the office and make that more at the forefront.
All right, super.
The,
Thank you for that.
I wanted to add one thing is why now biophilia in the working space? Why are we bringing nature, which was outside of the office, into office now? Because through studies that was run, we noticed that the humans are really connected to the nature. When they get into the nature, their way of thinking, their way of behaving, it changed a lot. And we know from the beginning we were in the nature. So we're coming from the nature to be in the house or in the office. And so if we want the people to, to boost themselves, if we want people to be more innovative, to think faster, we said, because we observed that, let's try to bring that in the office instead of letting people in the office feel bored and go out to refresh, to rejuvenate. Why not bringing into the office that atmosphere, that area, so that they feel they can move from their own desk to another space where they feel like in contact with the nature, and then they will be in that atmosphere that will give them the possibility to get new ideas and think better. This is why we bring biophilia into the office.
Okay, got that. So basically, I want to just coin a sentence and say that what we're trying to do now is to reunite man with nature. Because for a long time we kind of just separated ourselves from it. We are meant to be part of it. We're part of it. It's who we are. So thank you so much for that. Amaka, do you want to ask the next question?
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I hear you. Yeah.
Thank you, Ralu. Thank you, Dikan. Thank you, Augustine. We have an interesting question here, and I think it's I can put it under innovation and creativity. I'll just read the question. What lessons can we learn from unconventional office designs that prioritize innovation? Augustine, do you want to speak to that?
Yes. What we call unconventional means that we're moving from traditional to new way. New way means that we're taking into consideration the new trends. The environment is changing. The way we work is changing, and more after the post-COVID. The way we used to work is also changing because we're using technology. We are collaborating with people that are far in other countries. You can be in Africa and connect with people that are in US or Europe or China and still collaborating with them. And so getting this new, let's say, design of the space brings what we call flexibility. And that flexibility gives a lot of palette of spaces, palette of posture. We were talking about biophilia environment in the environment. We are talking about the diversity of spaces rearranged in different way. All of this is to boost the employee. When a company hire people, they buy for the land, they build their headquarters, they're spending a lot of money. But what is important for them, the aim they have is to get the return and to be a leader in the market. So how can they be leader in the market? How can they increase the turnover? It's when people get engaged, where people are satisfied with their working environment. This is where they become more, they get new idea, they challenge their colleague, they discuss about and think that are concerned and get a new idea. This is how they can differentiate themselves from the competitors. And at the end, not at the least, but they also improve their well-being. We're talking about physical well-being, but we're talking also about emotional well-being and cognitive well-being. And so this is really interesting for companies because they have another tool. They were buying IT tool, they were buying furniture, but now they need to use their space to support the workers, the employee, so that they become more efficient and then they can reach their target.
Thank you very much. So I know that Declan had already spoken about how hybrid work can sorry about that. How designing for creativity in a hybrid work or remote work culture, the challenges that we have. Do you want to throw more light on that area? Because I know that it's closely related to what Augustine just spoke about.
Yeah, of course. So the idea really is that the technology and the challenge that we face with remote work is well, the main thing would be the technology. The idea is to give everyone an equitable experience. So, for example, making sure that people who are connecting remotely feel equally as valued as the people who are there in person. So that could be down to the challenges of technology. We've seen today at times if you had a meeting and the technology is not working, it creates a bad experience. And there could be multiple ways to connect to a call or connect on a screen. But then it also goes to the challenge of how the room is set up. Like if we have a traditional meeting room and then we add a screen, and then all of a sudden, to a lot of people, that's a hybrid, or that's a hybrid possibility, but it's not a space or application or setting that's ideally meant for that. So it's about how we shape the room, how we think about where the cameras are placed, how the technology is accessed, the different postures that are used. So it's all those different things that have to come together to make a successful remote work experience and to give people a better way of connecting and a better experience.
Okay, thank you, Declan. So we've spoken. Okay, Jackie, did you want to say something?
No, you go ahead with your question. I've got one more. from someone who I
Okay.
think is quite interesting. Yeah.
I just wanted to combine what Augustine and Declan had already explained to us. I mean, Augustine talking about unconventional office designs and Declan talking about the challenges of designing for creativity in a hybrid or remote work culture. I just want to ask this question, but how can the workplace layout encourage collaboration and innovation among employees? Ralu, can you speak to this?
Sure. So first of all, innovation and creativity, they cannot be forced. We cannot create a room and say, okay, this room is for innovation, you do innovation there. It's these are processes that happen unplanned. So to make that happen, you have to give users the possibility to meet up unconventionally, let's say. So that means that the workplace layout should include a variety of settings that invite people to informal gatherings. So let's say maybe a work cafe. I don't know. We were mentioning those. Sorry?
I was going
Yeah,
to
go
ask,
ahead.
basically just accidentally meeting somewhere on the corridor,
Exactly.
things like that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think this is how workplace design can um, ease the innovation and creativity just by making users meet and trigger the impromptu collaboration with inspiring spaces.
Yes.
I think as well,
What
if
I
Thank you
I
so
want
much
just
to,
for
add to
that.
that. Oh, sorry, Augustine, you go
Yes,
first.
yes.
yeah,
Very
uh,
interesting
what
topic, I know. Augustine.
what I wanted to add on to that one is that, as Raluka said, it's not just that there is a room there and we call it collaboration room or this room. No, but for the clients who are online and part of the audience, what we do workshops with you to better understand what you need, to better understand how you work, to better understand what is your current workplace, where you want to shift from. And it's from all of those reports that we get combined to the insight we got through the research that we try to implement. So we do it in such a way that it's on purpose because this is the objective you guys want to reach. But when you come to the environment, there is nothing written, but it push you, like Jackie was saying, accidentally. It's pushing, the environment is calling you, it's pushing you to go, for example, and collaborate, to go and sit somewhere, take a coffee, but still work with one of your colleagues and discuss. This is where you get new ideas. This is where you get innovation coming.
Thank you. Thank you so much
Declan,
for
I
that.
think you
Declan, you were
wanted
going
to
to add something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think as you mentioned, it is an exciting topic to talk about. I was just going to say, I think it's really um, interesting as well that when we talk about encouraging that collaboration, maybe one person, the way they collaborate is completely different to another person. So when we think about that idea that there might be a really successful space that works for one person, another person it doesn't. So that's why it's really important when we think about going back to that, giving more ways for people to engage, more ways for them to collaborate in different ways, because teams are different, people are different. Same works for social spaces and for focus spaces. We've seen a lot in case studies and projects that they might love this focus space, so let's just put it 10 times across the floor plan. And that's not really giving different people ways to engage. It's the same thing. So maybe it works for some people, maybe it doesn't work for other people. So
Thank you so much for that. Because I think, Declan, you've kind of spoken to one of the questions that I had. And I hope, oh yeah, they're still here. So there was a question on the platform, and someone had asked, how can organizations create inclusive spaces that cater to diverse employee needs. And in my mind, I'm thinking neurodiversity, not just being diverse in maybe culture, things like that, but even, in neurodiversity, how have you had to are there any insights from your research? Are there ways that you have advised clients to kind of work around that? So I'm asking two questions. That's one. The second one is this. I don't know who's going to take this one, but it might be for Auguste, because we have some of our clients on here in real estate that manage properties for like companies. And with them, the question is always on, the return on investment. They need to make a business case for taking a certain decision. So my question in that regard is, how can stakeholders ensure that their workplace remains adaptable for future challenges? Because it keeps shifting, like shifts in work culture, technology, and things like that. So maybe Auguste, you can speak to that. But Declan, please just take the first one on
Sure.
the diverse needs of interiors.
Sure. I mean, that's a huge topic. That's, of course, as you mentioned, getting more and more important now. The idea of creating or making people feel included in spaces. So the way we think about it is that, where I mentioned before, giving them more ways to engage, but also trying to challenge the norms and how we design. So if, for example, I think there's a really nice analogy. A lot of companies say design for the average employee or design for an average thing. To pick that, average person, to design for their space around that person, and then they think, okay, that's the majority of the users can use that space, and there's two, maybe three extremists on either side that they'll make it work. But if you think about, for example, the idea of a playground, and if there's a swing in that playground, we've all sat on one. Like, who's that swing designed for, right? A person of a certain balance, a person of a certain height, a person of a certain weight, they've got two arms, etc. Now imagine if we took that swing and we placed the whole playground filled with that same swing. It kind of sends a message about who that playground is for, right? That person that we're designing for. So the idea, as I mentioned, is to create those intentional set menu spaces, that diversity of postures, that diversity of range of spaces, that people can choose how they want to work rather than one size fits all approach. So of course we can go into colors and the idea of designing for the idea of people with disabilities and stuff. We also have research on that, but that also is a huge topic to delve into. But hopefully that answered the question.
It does. And so maybe when I said, yes, fantastic. Yes, it actually does answer the question. Maybe on another webinar we can speak to that, because we're quite mindful of time, and it looks like we've got 10 more minutes to go. So Augustine, if you please don't mind responding to the other questions that I raised.
Okay, so the question was, how can stakeholders ensure that their workplace design remain adaptable to the future changes, like shift in the work culture and technology? What we encourage stakeholders is, from the beginning, work with partners like Steelcase and GCI Architect to start from the beginning thinking about flexibility of the working environment. Flexible because we know that things will change. We've noticed that things are changing. So what we propose as design for the space will be flexible. Flexible means that it does not mean that we can change area or we need to add more, for example, lanes, construction, not specifically, but use the same environment, what we call resiliency of the environment, make the environment become more resilient. Means same space, but we will change it in a way that furniture, even the furniture the stakeholder will buy, can be reused, can be rearranged in the same space, so that we get different palettes of spaces, different palettes also of posture and collaborations. The way we have the coffee area can be shifted from one place to another one. It depends. We don't know in the next 2 years or 10 years what will come new. Will it be another um, another COVID, we don't know, but we need to anticipate saying that let's set up space that would be flexible. If it's flexible, it can be adapted to all the change and shift that can happen from the future. It could be something happening. It could be their own decision. Say we have our working environment for maybe 2 or 3 years. We want to move it. We want to change it, shift it, so that when people come, when our clients come in, when our partners come in, they see something completely different, which means for the stakeholders that are communicating to the clients saying that we don't remain the same, we're also changing, we also want to adapt to something new. This is where we can also support you in your daily needs and work.
Super. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Amaka, do you have
Jackie, I
any
wanted
questions? Should I?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
I'm seeing like two interesting questions here, and I think it's under productivity and performance. Um, one is talking about the role of acoustics and lighting in maintaining focus and performance. So, how do we use the role of acoustics and lighting in maintaining focus and performance? Declan, can you say something about that?
Sure.
Before the client goes, I want to just quickly add one. And it's funny she's talking about this. She's talking about acoustic performance and lighting. You know, Branu spoke earlier on about people now looking for more private spaces to work. So obviously there's too much distraction in the world. So that's mental. And then even acoustically, I believe that it's a problem. So if you just layer that on to what's the feedback that you'll be giving is very helpful. Thank you.
So, I mean, of course, it plays a huge role, and there's a few different factors. It depends, first of all, how we break down a space. If we take a floor plan, for example, and you put a super social and super collaborative setting that might work really well, but you put that right next to a team zone that's meant to be focused, no amount of acoustics, or it'd be very difficult to challenge or tackle the acoustics in that space. So it first of all starts with how you design that floor plan, right? How we're putting these zones together. Same with lighting in a way. When I mentioned about the difference between, especially in last years, people coming back to the office and they're coming from their home environments where it's cozy lighting, it's natural lighting that they're used to. You know, everyone wants a beautifully lit home that's filled with, atmospheric lighting, that kind of thing. And when they come to the office and all of a sudden, for example, it's like you see in my screen, if it's just that heavy, oppressive office lighting, it's a completely different atmosphere that you're feeling. So when you're designing these rejuvenation spaces, the importance, or these focus spaces, the importance of warm lighting, the importance of mood lighting at times is huge. And it helps automatically set the tone and emphasize what activities would happen in that space. And then the acoustics as well, just bringing that in, like, for example, all those elements, just like technology and lighting, they come together to make a successful space. So you really have to keep that in mind. So hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, that's clear. But Jackie made a point. She was talking about, mitigating distractions, obviously. So how can design mitigate distractions while trying to achieve creativity and collaboration? Augustine, do you want to speak to that?
I guess. Is the plan there?
You're muted.
Sorry. So, how can the design mitigate distraction in the work environment and increase collaboration, increase in interconnections and innovation? It has to be on purpose. It has to be we need to think about it. What is the type of work they are doing in the environment? What is the type of spaces we can create? We can create, for example, even if it's an open space, we can add areas where we have, for example, pods in dot pods, and people can go there and have the meeting. So it reduces also the distraction. We know that we create more, let's say, focus areas, as well I was saying before, not 100% enclosed, but we have some focus area where people go to concentrate on the work and what they have to do. So when you get in that area, you know that people in this area, they need like peaceful and quiet area because they want to concentrate on what we are doing. If you want to do some noises, if you want to communicate with one colleague, you have like bigger pods where you can be. So when doing the design, we take into consideration all of these factors. In fact, those factors has to come from the client. That's why with the client and with the architect, we take time to go and understand deeply what is their need. When we talk about needs, we have two types of needs. We have needs that are expressed by the customer because they use to work in an environment, an existing environment. But we have also needs that are not expressed. We call them unexpressed need or hiding needs. Those ones we get them through workshops and through observation of their workplace, and we get those reports. They said that they need this and that, but looking at what they say through the workshop and saying how they do work, it's also good for them to have, for example, some places where they can have kind of pods, they can have kind of focus area. Otherwise, they're going to have too much distraction in their environment, and they won't be able to reach the result they're expecting. Why? Because the workplace is not designed for this purpose. So if we know that purpose is to reduce the distraction, then it has to be designed for that specifically.
Thank you so much, Augustine. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Now I have one question. This is from me, and I'm using my experience in the industry to ask this question. I find, and it's not something that we do. You just spoke now about how there's got to be a strategy for deploying whatever solutions you need to deploy in any space, whether you're planning for the furniture or the space, or the interior design, whatever. So there's not a lot of that. Now, because one of the things that drive us is just continuous improvement. I wonder whether you talked about having workshops with clients prior to having, doing their projects and things like that. But I say to people that if you want to improve something, you have to find a way to measure it, right? And that should be something that you should be able to sell to the client. Now, at the end of a project, do you engage in what you call post-occupancy evaluations, that sort of thing? Are there things like that you're able to do for the clients? Say you have a project that you just finished for a particular client, I don't know, Sony Music, and they're like, okay, we need to understand whether we have made the right investment and what are the benefits of this investment. Is there something you're able to do for the clients?
Yeah, there are things that we can do because through the let's say through the process, we also do what we call education for transition, education for, let's say, new destination. What we call this new destination is what we want to reach, what the company want to reach, the new area, the new working environment they want to reach. What we noticed through research is that when employees are satisfied with their working environment, they increase the turnover. They work so hard, they give best from themselves that they increase the turnover by 3 or 4 or 5%. And so we will then help the company to measure how people are satisfied from their new working environment. How is it impacting their result? That we can see if how people get engaged inside the company, how new ideas that are bringing on the table to be discussed, how sales are now evaluating, is growing, is increasing. These things help them to understand that they have some element that the change they wanted to reach is on the right way.
Fantastic. That's some deep diving into getting information that helps the client. Okay, I think
Mhm.
maybe on that note, we will start to round up. Maybe we will need to have continue with this conversation. I like the line of and what you just spoke about now. I think is very, very interesting. I think it's something that is required on our turf. But I have to just speak to the young audience, like the maybe like the young designers who are on here. Um, there's a question here that talks about um, what skills should young designers focus on to create workplaces that enhance well-being and productivity? Ideally, that should be answered by us, but I
Yeah.
wonder whether you have any insight. Just, one sentence, nothing too much. You just say, is there any particular skill, yeah, young designers here should have, knowing the sort of gaps that we have here, you know, what would you advise? What sort of skills would you advise a young designer to hone? The clan?
Yeah, I think like I would say it was, I mean, I can speak from personal experience a little bit, but especially at Staircase, things like critical thinking, empathy. I think that is a huge one because we're always trying to put ourselves in the shoes of other people and see how they feel and see how they work and get in their head. And then, of course, being agile, just being able to adapt to different situations, different learnings,
Yeah,
and change the process. So,
yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Ralu?
Yeah, I share the same thoughts as Declan. So, empathy, critical thinking, being agile, and these are besides the technical skills. Now, as we also talked about AI and how AI is also changing our field. So then we need to have our human touch, like empathy to the user, really important, and the soft skills, so we continue thriving in this field.
Thank you so much for that. Augustine, do you want to add anything there?
I think that on top of this, what I've been observing, I'm not a designer, but I've been working with a designer in the middle of the designer. I would say that they have to be curious. They have to think different. If they see something, they have seen people designing things. They have from a young generation, which means that the world is expecting a lot of out of them. So they need to see the world differently. They need to see things differently, and
Yeah,
they need to be curious. How can this be done differently? And then I think that plus all that have been said, there will be the great designer.
fantastic. Thank you. And over to you, Amaka, on the James Cubitt interior side. What would our advice be to young
Um,
designers?
okay, just to add to what Ralu and Declan said, to me that would be focusing on human-centered design, trying to address the needs and behavior and the experiences of people that we're designing for. Um, what this will do will be to, once we follow this approach, or once the younger ones follow this approach, they'll be able to produce or achieve a practical and user-friendly and effective space. I also want to add inclusive design. To me, that's creating spaces, even if it's products and services that are used that are usable and accessible to the widest range of people. So I think that that's a skill that the younger ones should try to have, and also understanding ergonomics. And yeah, I think that's all.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you so much, guys. To my own advice would be, I want to steal Augustine's own. You should just stay curious. You should just question everything. And at the heart of your questioning, let empathy just guide you to say, okay, I'm designing for another human person. Like Amaka has said, you have to try and look at it from that point of view, see it through those sort of lenses. so that we can design for things that have meaning, whether they're products or spaces. Now, Augustine, your team have given this very nice presentation. We want to first of all thank you for giving us your time. I know how hard how hard we pushed you guys. It was so short. We really appreciate the effort, and we're really hoping that we have more of this sort of sessions in the future. I'm sure people are wondering how they can maybe reach you. Is there anything you want to share again about Steelcase and how you can be reached before we round up?
Before everything, I wanted to say thank you for organizing this webinar, and thank you for the audience also participating to this one. It might be a topic that they wanted maybe to deep dive later on after this one, or something specifically related to their own environment, or how they can change or how they can adapt it. It's possible. We are here for that. This is let's say our passion. We like doing that. So they can contact me. I will share my email ID so that they can contact me as Nyame. I think that someone can put it in the chat so that they can get it. And nyamian@steelcase.com. So let me put it in the chat.
Thank you so much for that.
And also, Jackie, I just wanted to add
Amaka?
that yeah, there's a feedback form. The link has been posted in the chat. Please, if you can fill it. I'm talking to the audience now. Would really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, please. You need to fill that, because this is where, earlier on, that's why I talked about getting information, getting data to try and improve systems. This is how we will